On the morning of February 10th, 2019, in a quiet neighborhood in Cayce, South Carolina, 6-year-old Faye Swetlik went missing. It started as a regular day, with Faye playing outside her home, just like any other child. But by the afternoon, everything had changed. Her family's worst fears were realized when she vanished without a trace. Her disappearance sparked an extensive search effort that captivated the entire community, but what they uncovered was even more chilling than anyone could have imagined. To truly understand the haunting nature of this case, we need to look at the details leading up to Faye's disappearance. Faye Swetlik was a bright, energetic little girl with a big smile. She lived with her mother, who was a single parent, and her 3-year-old brother in a modest neighborhood. On the morning of February 10th, Faye was outside playing near her home while her mother was inside, doing household chores. Faye had been outside playing in the snow, but when her mother went to check on her around 3 p.m., she was gone. No signs of a struggle, no footprints in the snow, just an empty front yard. This wasn't the kind of disappearance that usually happens in a small town like Cayce. People weren't used to such things. But Faye's mother, frantic with worry, immediately contacted the authorities. As the hours passed and there was still no sign of Faye, the community began to rally together. Volunteers came to help, and the police were on high alert, searching the neighborhood, canvassing for any leads, and talking to residents. The case seemed to escalate quickly, with law enforcement officials expanding the search area, even bringing in K-9 units and helicopters. They questioned everyone in the area, including neighbors, and soon began to focus on one individual in particular. This individual was Coty Scott Taylor, a 30-year-old man who lived just a few houses away from Faye's family. Taylor was known to be a quiet, reclusive figure in the neighborhood. He lived alone, and his background didn't immediately raise any red flags. However, as investigators dug deeper, they found that he had been questioned in the past for minor issues, but nothing had suggested he would be involved in something as horrific as a child's abduction. While the search for Faye continued, the clock was ticking, and every passing hour made it harder to hold on to hope that she would be found safe. The local police began to release more information, hoping that it would prompt someone to come forward with a crucial tip. They revealed that Faye had been last seen playing outside her home and that there were no signs of her leaving voluntarily. The authorities also began to suspect that foul play might be involved, considering how quickly she had disappeared without a trace. 3 days passed with no word. Then, on February 13th, 2019, a break in the case occurred. Faye's body was found in a wooded area behind her neighborhood. It was a heartbreaking discovery, and it sent shockwaves through the town of Cayce. The search that had been so full of hope and desperation now turned into a somber recovery effort. But even more chilling than the discovery of Faye's body was what came next. Coty Scott Taylor, the neighbor who had been questioned earlier in the investigation, was also found dead in his home that same day. He had died from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound, but there was no note or clear explanation. His death immediately raised more questions about his possible involvement in Faye's disappearance and death. Law enforcement officials began to connect the dots. Taylor had been one of the last people to see Faye before she went missing. Surveillance footage showed Faye walking past his home on the day she disappeared, but it's unclear whether they interacted. The authorities were still piecing together the timeline of events, but they started to suspect that Taylor might have been involved in her abduction and that his death could have been related to his actions. But here's where the case gets even murkier. While the investigation seemed to point toward Taylor, there was never enough concrete evidence to definitively tie him to Faye's death. Investigators found no clear motive or explanation for why he would have targeted Faye. What they did find, however, was evidence that Taylor's death raised more questions than it answered. He didn't have any known history of violence, and there was no apparent connection between him and Faye's family. So why did he seemingly take his own life shortly after Faye's body was discovered? Some theories suggested that Taylor may have been trying to cover his tracks, and that his death was his way of avoiding being caught. Others speculated that he may have been suffering from mental health issues, and that his actions weren't premeditated. However, the fact that he had been a prime suspect, combined with the tragic timing of his death, left many wondering if he had something to do with Faye's fate. Despite all the speculation, law enforcement was unable to confirm whether Coty Scott Taylor was the person responsible for Faye Swetlik's death. The case was officially closed, but it remained an open wound for the people who had been so invested in finding answers. One of the most heartbreaking parts of this case is the impact it had on the community and Faye's family. The Swetlik family, already devastated by the loss of their young daughter, now had to contend with the mystery surrounding her death. They were left with more questions than answers. How could a seemingly quiet, harmless neighbor become involved in something so tragic? What could have driven someone to hurt a child in such a horrific way? And then there's the bigger question. Was Faye's death truly a random act of violence, or was it part of something darker? The strange circumstances surrounding Coty Taylor's death have led to countless theories and online discussions, but the truth remains elusive. For now, Faye's family can only grieve and try to make sense of the senseless tragedy that stole their daughter's life. In the end, the disappearance and death of Faye Swetlik is a case that leaves us with more questions than answers. Did Coty Scott Taylor truly play a role in her death, or was he just an unfortunate neighbor caught up in an even darker mystery? We may never know. But one thing is certain, Faye Swetlik's life will always be remembered, and her death will continue to haunt those who were closest to her. Thank you for watching, and if you have any thoughts or theories about this case, leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more true crime stories that continue to puzzle the world.